Our Las Vegas Raiders preview their offseason in 60 seconds. Hire Pete Carroll as their head coach, Chip Kelly as their OC, retain Patrick Graham as their DC, extended Max Crosby 3 years, $106 million, traded for and extended Geno Smith 2 years, $75 million, extended Colton Miller 3 years, $66 million, signed Jeremy Chin 2 years, $16 million, traded for Kenny Pickett and Thomas Booker this offseason. Brought back Malcolm Kuntz on a 1-year deal. Adam Butler signed Alex Capper, Jermaine Pratt, Eric Stokes, and Landon Roberts, Raheem Mostert in the draft. Ashton Jeanty, 6th overall. Wide receiver Jack Besh, second round, 58th overall. Cornerback Darian Porter in the 3rd round. Offensive guard Caleb Rogers in the 3rd round. Offensive tackle Charles Grant in the 3rd round. Dante Thornton, the wide receiver, in the 4th round. Defensive tackle Tonka Hemingway in the 4th round. Lost Traven Merrick, Nate Hobbs, Robert Spillane in free agency, along with Divine Diablo, and also traded Jacorian Bennett for Thomas Booker. What are you excited about watching, Derek, with the 2025 Raiders?
This offense is going to be so weird, and I'm like really excited to see what it looks like. And there's the reason I say that is I think this is very clearly going to be a 12 personnel offense. It already was last year, and I just expect that to be true because I think we're going to get even more from Michael Mayer this year. So they're going to be a 12 personnel offense. And I think you can also make the case that the back is not necessarily their best skill player, but someone who has like Pro Bowl potential. In my mind, there are only 2, maybe 3 other offenses who are built this way. You have Buffalo, who I think is built this way. They do a lot of heavier stuff, and their back is a really good player. You have the Ravens, who obviously are kind of built the same way. They have Derrick Henry. And then I think you can also make the same case about Detroit. I think you have to check Buffalo and Baltimore off the list. Like, they have the superstars at quarterback. That is a completely different consideration. So they need to be something-ish like what the Lions have been. But even that gets a little bit complicated because Chip Kelly, to me, is someone who wants to be a little bit more from the gun. Geno Smith is someone who wants to play a little bit more from the gun than the Lions. Like, it's just such a weird construct of how this thing is supposed to be put together that if they can make it work, it's going to be, I'm putting them on every Tuesday morning.
Do you think we really have to talk about this team in those terms, though? Because it almost feels like we shouldn't think about them as a 12 personnel team and be like, all right, this is how 12 personnel teams usually succeed. Mm-hmm. Because Brock Bowers is such a dynamic pass catcher that he almost ceases to be a tight end when you think about what he's providing to the offense.
I mean,
right?
But isn't that like kind of true of those other offenses? Like Mark Andrews is kind of that at his best. Sam Laporta is that at his best. I don't like. I think Bowers is better than those guys.
That's what I was about to say. You were going to compare Brock Bowers to Sam Laporta and Mark Andrews?
I mean, he's better than those guys, but in terms of like the way that you use them, it's probably not all that different. So like in terms of like the process of using them, I don't think it's supposed to look that crazy or that different.
I feel like in some ways, Brock Bowers to me almost ceases to be a tight end. Like he had 112 catches for 1,200 yards last year as like the focal point of the passing game. Like I understand where you're coming from, but I think that he's just in a different space when it comes to the pecking order and how he's deployed as a receiver than any of those guys. And so I get what you're saying. I just don't think we have to limit this team to the other 12 personnel teams because their 12 personnel just feels a little bit different than all of those teams. At least a little bit different.
Then what does it look like?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Because then I don't know who it's supposed to look like. Who is that style of player? It's just such a. But then again, that's why this is so exciting. Like they are.
That's the fun thing about having a unicorn.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about having a unicorn player.
Well, I mean, I think the best possible comparison, and I don't know if he's necessarily going to be this guy, but a tight end that really wasn't used that much like a tight end when this offense was at its best is what Travis Kelce was for the Chiefs. And I will say, you're going to say, well, what about the Patrick Mahomes part of this? We're going to throw Patrick Mahomes in with the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson thing. Travis Kelce was an absurdly productive player as a fake tight end on those teams in Kansas City when Alex Smith was the quarterback. So I think, once again, I am going to compare this team to the early Andy Reid Chiefs teams with Alex Smith because I think that's one more similarity that they have, along with like the 20 other ones that they have.
That might be the answer. That's actually really good. I like that a lot.
So
good teams, by the way.
Yes, very good teams. And I think that was always, to me, the vision for what the Raiders were trying to do. Going out and getting Pete Carroll and trading for Geno Smith kind of felt like the the Chiefs going out and trading for Alex Smith and hiring Andy Reid. Obviously, Andy Reid is younger than Pete Carroll is now, but that like instant credibility, instant competency at those two spots, even if the quarterback is a little bit older, I do think that was like the best path forward here. And I think it's a similar deal. Like those early Chiefs offenses were weird as hell. They had a season where they did not throw a touchdown pass to a wide receiver. We might have another one. Considering Jacoby Myers' history with touchdown scoring, and what Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer are going to be here, this is what we're talking about. Jamal Charles.
That's one of those stats that like was so ingrained in my brain at one point, but I just haven't needed to think about it. Like it's like I found my exercise bike after 2 years of using it as a laundry hamper. Like I had forgotten that ever happened.
I'm looking forward to watching how weird this offense is. And Chip Kelly, like, what is Chip Kelly at this stage as an offensive coordinator? Like, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but there are a lot of layers of intrigue to this group, and I cannot wait to turn it on when we get to week 1. Let's talk about these swing points for the 2025 Raiders. Derrik, what do you got?
It's the thing I've talked about probably the most, other than the cool parts of the offense. When we've talked about this team this offseason, the offensive line still to me is like, there's a chance it's nice, right? Like Colton Miller is a solid left tackle. I think JPJ, there's some optimism for what he can be, especially now that I think he's going to settle in at guard, which in my opinion probably is better for him. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. There's some excitement about the way that like DJ Glaze played last year. Like there's some hope for optimism with a lot of young pieces on this offensive line. It was also one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year. Like in terms of yards before contact, they were at 1.08, which was dead last year. And so I know the run game was bad because of the running backs, but it was also bad in part because the offensive line I don't really think was moving people. And so I think some of the quarterback issues stemmed into that. I think some of the lack of really good offensive play calling stemmed into that. But is Chip Kelly going to raise that to 32 to 25, or can he actually really unlock something with a lot of these young pieces? I think it's a lot of to be seen.
Yeah, I think every once in a while, I completely understand where you're coming from, where they're going to roll with the same offensive line personnel. Why would we expect different results? The ecosystem and like what the offensive coordinator is building from a run game perspective can have more of an impact on this thing than the offensive line talent individually sometimes. And so I think you're trying to convince yourself that what Chip Kelly had built over the last few years, and I feel like it's probably going to be more UCLA than it was Ohio State based on like what other people around the league believe about this offense. But Chip Kelly really being able to just construct a run game that's a little bit better put together than the one we saw last year, and then appreciable steps from some of those offensive line pieces. I think that's the answer. And that to me is what we're talking about here. I'm the exact same spot as you. For me, the offensive line is the swing point of this team. And so DJ Glaze at right tackle, I think played well enough last year to deserve walking into this year with the right tackle job. That's what I would say about that. Jordan Meredith, I actually thought played some really good football for them last year in like spot duty at guard. And when they signed Alex Kappa, part of me was like, oh, that's interesting. I actually thought that Jordan Meredith played pretty well last year and kind of wanted to see him again. And then they just moved him to center and moved Jackson Powers Johnson to guard. And so that was the 5 that in the back half of last season, I was kind of like, all right, like I can get behind this. And so to see them roll with that 5, that's what I wanted to see. But can DJ Glaze go from being a guy who had enough flashes to deserve a starting job this year to somebody who takes a significant step forward? That's not always the case for these day 2 offensive linemen that have a little kernel of something. Like it's not guaranteed that development is going to happen. And Jackson Powers Johnson, same kind of deal. And then the other thing you're throwing in here, their offensive line coach is Pete Carroll's son, and he has never been an NFL offensive line coach before. He was an assistant offensive line coach a couple different times, and then he was an offensive line coach and coordinator for both Arizona and Washington under Jed Fish over the last 3 or 4 years. So do you have the right development circumstances for a lot of those young guys who you need to take a step forward? I'm open to the answer being yes, but I think whatever way that goes is literally going to be the swing point for the 2025 Raiders.
This is going to sound tongue-in-cheek. I don't mean it to be, though. How much does it alleviate any concern that your quarterback has a PhD in dealing with, we'll call it, unideal circumstances in the pocket?
It's funny that I actually care more about what they're doing in the run game than I do about what they're doing in pass protection. Like that's probably the more pressing thing for me right now, right or wrong. That's, I guess, just how I'm framing it.
I think that thing always depends because it's like the quarterbacks who are really good at mitigating pressure, I think they can withstand that up until the offensive line is like 26th or worse. And then it's just like nobody can handle this. And so it's like if they can clear that bar, which like in Seattle, the 2022 team did and they were fine. The 2024 team did not. And that was part of why I think the offense looked the way that it did. So if the offensive line in Las Vegas can just clear that bar, Geno will probably be fine.
Dave, what is your swing point for the 2025 Raiders?
We all love Brock Bowers. We're all super excited about him. I think that and Jeanty, the success of the run game can mitigate this, but at the end of the day, you do still have wide receivers. Even if you play a lot of 12 personnel, you're going to have two of them on the field. And the most established one might want out of Las Vegas. Jacoby Myers requested a trade apparently, which I don't know why the Raiders would grant that. I guess if somebody, if a Vikings or a similar team were that desperate for receiver help, maybe the price is so good that you don't turn it down. But it's not good anyway, right? Like behind Jacoby Myers, you got Trey Tucker, who had like an encouraging season on a bad team. You got a handful of, you got three rookies really. Like Dante Thornton is the one that's getting all of the press right now. Jack Besh as well, and then you had Tommy Mellett on day 3. So 3 guys that have never done this, and then they just added Amari Cooper for a nice little Raiders reunion. Maybe Amari just didn't want to do training camp. I don't know, but I'm not getting super jacked with the amount of injuries that Amari's dealt with over the last couple of years. I'm not getting super jacked about that. So even if you don't need to lean heavily on your receivers in this offense, you still probably want more than this.
And Dante Thornton, it feels like he's getting that job because Jack Besh, I feel like they consider like the heir apparent to what Jacoby Myers is in terms of skill sets. And so that's why it feels like Thornton's getting that first crack. And for the Amari Cooper part of this, it almost feels like this isn't worth it. Like it kind of reminds me of the Keenan Allen thing. It's just like, just roll with the kids. Like what does adding Amari Cooper at this stage do for you? Unless you are truly terrified of what you're going to get from those outside receivers, it almost feels like it would be more valuable this year to let them tank their lumps a little bit than have this version of Amari Cooper taking 500 snaps for you. Like, I just don't get why that's beneficial to like the multi-year plan for the Raiders.
Acquiring Amari makes a ton of sense for a Buffalo who's like, we just need a guy who can just give us a little something extra to try to get us into the AFC title game. Even though Amari was hurt for a lot of that run, like that's why you do that if you're close to getting over the hump. Amari Cooper at this stage in his career on a team like this, and I love Amari, but it just feels more like a progress stopper than anything. I agree with you.
I feel bad for Jacoby Myers. All Jacoby Myers does is like be a pretty good player, and all the teams he played for are like, yeah, we don't really feel like paying you.
Yeah, we're good here,
this was fun, but I think we're okay. Again, last year, he's just a good player who doesn't seem to have staying power with any of these teams. I think in New England, he's a late round pick. That team tends to follow you around. And with the Raiders, he's in a spot where this is not the regime that brought him on. And I assume they're not overly enthused about paying someone to be a part of the future when they don't really know which direction this is all going to go. But it leaves Jacoby Myers in a pretty spot.
He's like the best, always a bridesmaid, never a bride receiver in the NFL, which is a weird spot to be in. But I guess he's had a decent career still.
Nobody gets excited about a high end too, which sucks for him.
And that's exactly what Jacoby Myers is. I can't wait for Jacoby Myers to be on a contender next year and like play meaningful football deep into the season. What is keeping you up at night, Dave, about the Las Vegas Raiders this year?
Can the defense be anything? Like, can the defense be better than a unit that completely submarines this season, which is what I'm worried that it could be, particularly on the back end. Like, you look at some of the guys that look like they're going to be playing major roles. I've always been a big fan of Jeremy Chin's game going all the way back to Carolina. I liked the addition in Washington last year. I'm a lot less excited about Jeremy Chin when Eric Stokes is a starting corner and the other corner job is up for grabs between a rookie and Darian Porter and a handful of guys that like haven't played meaningful snaps in the NFL. You could say similar things about the safety position, whether it's like, couple year pros who haven't done a whole lot or newcomers. Obviously, hey, Max Crosby's the man. He's one of my favorite players in the entire NFL, but I don't think you can build the whole thing out of Max Crosby. And the secondary looks like a group that could have you not where you want to be in all the stat sheets.
This defense feels too much like when I look at the Cincinnati Bengals depth chart, where it's or last year in particular, where it's like, man, I really like the defensive coordinator in minds with Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham, and you've got one like monster pass rusher. Everything else is a question mark. You even have literally Jermaine Pratt, who was on that team last year, which I think is
but
kind of funny.
At least the Bengals had like young, highly drafted players.
You had
like,
hope.
all right,
yeah.
maybe this could work out. The Raiders don't even have that. They've got like all reclamation projects or aging pieces from all of these other teams. This is where Patrick Graham is really going to have to make his money. And a couple of years ago, I don't think anyone believed that the Raiders were an overwhelmingly talented defense. And they finished by the end of the season like top 10, top 12 in a lot of metrics. Patrick Graham is a really good defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I think it would require actual wizardry from him to get there with this group. The defensive back room, I mean, I think Darian Porter eventually gets that job because why not, right? Like, let's just give him a shot and see what we have. And I think that's why they've made the moves that they did, trading Ja'Cory Bennett, all of that. Eric Stokes played 17 games last year and is like a spot player. He started 7 of them. If you look at the last couple seasons before 2024, he played 3 games in 2023 and 9 games in 2022. Like the idea that he's just going to be a surefire starter for them all year, we're going to be holding on to our hats with this defense. Like they were never going to be able to do enough in year one. There are a lot of just plug-in holes and can we get by for the year with what's going on here? And again, I think they're going to be asking a lot of Patrick Graham, who I think is fantastic at his job, but I don't think anyone could really do enough with this group as currently constructed.
Devin White and Jamal Adams are on the 2 deep of this team. I actually, that early in the preseason, I think it was week 1, we were doing the preseason reaction show, and I was like watching a Raiders game, and this dude was just flying around, just making every play, and I was like, this is fun. Who's this guy? And I realized it was Jamal Adams, and I was like, that's not as fun as I thought it was.
That's not cool anymore.
You don't want to be making every play in a preseason game if you were drafted in 2017. That's not the goal.
And Derek, I think what you're watching the first month of the season is that like very weird linebacker group.
It is. And like we can start with the backups. The fact that Jamal Adams and Devin White, you have one guy who is not by trade a linebacker, even though he's done some of that in his career, in Jamal Adams. And then you have Devin White, who is like 5 years removed from playing any sort of serious like high level football. So that part of it is completely bizarre. And then their starters, I truly adore Landon Roberts. He's one of my favorite, like relative to quality, he is one of my favorite players in the league, but he's like a spot starter quality linebacker. And so the fact that they're jumping into the season with him as their guy, I think is a little bit interesting. And then next to him is Jermaine Pratt, who is very funny body type wise next to Landon Roberts, because Landon Roberts is built like a fire hydrant, short, squatty, all that stuff. Jermaine Pratt is big, long. You want to kind of put him on the edge sometimes because he can set the edge that way. It's just and neither of these guys can cover really well. Like it's just such a funny mix that they've got in this linebacker room that I don't know how it's supposed to work other than you hope that these guys are like really, really good run defenders and that just lets you unleash the pass rush. I don't know.
What do we think success looks like for the 2025 Raiders, Dave?
Just look like a team that traded for Geno Smith and added Pete Carroll. Like that's all I want. I want meaningful football late in the year, like trade wins and losses. Let's avoid the 10-game losing streak. Let's avoid the midseason firing, which obviously I don't anticipate that happening with Pete Carroll. I want this team to win some surprising games, be a tough out, overcome your defense a couple of times, upset somebody you're not supposed to. And at the end of the season, if you have, let's say, I would say 7 or more wins for the Raiders would be successful. Like if they win 6, that's fine. But if you win 7 games with this version of the team, now we can get excited about what you're going to add next year and who you might be after that.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like, what is the 2026 prognosis based on how this season goes? And I think a lot of that is, did you hire the right people in the most important positions, or to acquire the right people in the most important positions? Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, Spytech. Do we feel the stability? You went out and you tried to find stability. Do we feel that? And on offense, does it feel like you've got a little bit of a runway over the next couple years where this is going to be a group that with another offseason can be the type of offense that keeps you competitive? And with the amount of money that you have to spend next year, which is like $80 million, can you do enough on defense where we feel like you can be relatively competitive by next season? If the answer to all of that stuff is yes, I think that is a successful season for the Raiders, even if they're like a 6-11 team this year.
That's pretty much how I feel. Like, ideally, you knock on the door of the wild card by the end, but that might not happen with the way that the defense is going to look. But to me, it's just like, with the offense, can we feel like we've got at least a 2 more years after this year runway to be like, okay, we can really do something? Like, this to me, like, this team was a little bit better when they acquired the quarterback, but like the Arizona Cardinals acquired Carson Palmer when he was exactly 34 years old, the way that the Raiders are now with Geno Smith. And they had like 2 or 3 more years of runway with how good that offense looked. If they can at least show some kernels of like having that type of arc, then that's success.
And I do think if they were in a lesser division, I would believe in the ceiling of the offense to where if you wanted me to make a case for them being like a surprising wild card team, I could do it. I think in the AFC West, that's really difficult. And with the defense, that's really difficult. But if this is one of those offenses that we are really excited to watch by week 10, I wouldn't be shocked by that. And I think that's a necessary part of the equation here if we're going to feel good about where the Raiders are by the end of the season.
They're a team that I want to watch play, which is not something you can take for granted with the Raiders over the last 20 years. So that's a good starting point.
Geno really helps with that. Geno, inherently watchable NFL quarterback. Thanks for watching the Athletic Football Show. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with us. Like and comment on this video, and we'll see you next time.